Hey guys, welcome back to the Transparent Realtor. It's Megan Schoaf, and I'm here again with Casey Whealton. And this is part three of our four-part series, educating and informing you guys about the different aspects of purchasing a house, specifically with financing. And a lot of times when we are working with clients, we get questions that were for the opposite party, right? Which is fine. I have no problems passing you back over to Casey saying, here's what I think, but you should probably ask Casey. And I know vice versa for me. We're going to go kind of over a mock scenario with you guys. So I start off, you reach out and you say, hey, Meg, I want to buy a house. Wonderful. There's a couple of things I ask you. I usually ask you, where do you want to buy? When do you want to make this happen? And then I ask you if you're going to be paying with cash or financing. And if your answer is financing, my next question is, are you working with a lender already? And if their answer is no, then I put them in a group text thread with Casey and I do a warm welcome where I say, hey, Casey, please allow me to introduce you to Joe Smith. Joe Smith is looking to purchase in the next X amount of time. I try to give a little bit of context as to his scenario, and then that's when Casey takes over, and then she starts her conversation with Joe.
Yep, and so from there, I like to start with an intro call so that I can get an idea of what your goals are and your timeline. And then with that information, I'm able to start figuring out what loan types are likely going to be a good fit for us to look into, answer any questions that you may have about the process, and basically just start building a relationship so that you feel comfortable talking with me because when we're looking at a mortgage application, we're talking about a lot of things that people aren't used to disclosing to folks. So we're talking about, where have you worked and where have you lived, and let's look at your credit and this sort of thing. So it's important to establish that trust first, so that
they're in a vulnerable position, right? It's a lot of exposing of personal information, and so that makes sense. Right. I don't know that I would want to tell a total stranger all about my financial history.
Yeah.
So I respect that.
Well,
yeah.
I always tell folks it's kind of like going to the doctor. There is nothing you have that I haven't seen.
So I can imagine. Yeah.
Like, don't worry. I'm on your team. So
right.
It's just to give that assurance.
Of course.
And to help people to feel more comfortable and know that my goal is to help you reach your goal. That's it. We're in this together.
Right. Zero judgment included. It's just, okay, here's where we're at. Now let's get to yes. Let's figure out a solution.
Sure.
Right.
In Megan's department. So, anything that's related to, the numbers, the finance part, like, what do I need to avoid doing? Things like don't open up new lines of credit, things like that, or how much do I need to have saved? What can I afford? The number side, that's my lane. And then when you get into the property side, negotiating repairs, looking for houses, talking about scheduling your closing date, and there's a lot more. You take it from there, but that's when I volley it back to Megan because she's going to know all about the house. I'm the numbers girl.
So after you have that intro call, then they do a credit application with you and your company, correct?
Yes.
And then what happens then?
So at that point, I'm going to do a thorough review of everything in the file. And this is where I really feel that our process shines over an automated process that just spits out a qualification.
100% agreed. Yep.
I'm going in there and I'm looking at all the details to make sure that there's nothing that's going to trip us up. So as much information as you can provide in the beginning is really helpful. So that, pay stubs, bank statements, whatever is needed for your specific loan. I'm looking through that and then asking you some questions, making sure that we're good to go. And then we start talking about the numbers and any options that are on the table. So, we might have options A, B, and C, right, for different loan types. And then the buyer can choose their own adventure. They can decide which way they want to go, what they feel like is the best choice. But yeah, that's when we nail down like the pre-approval and the amount, either that the pre-approval limit, or oftentimes it may be, this is the sales price where our client is most comfortable with their payment. So a lot of people don't take it all the way up as far as they can go. They tell me, hey, I want my payment to be $1,700 a month. What does that mean as far as the sales price with my loan? So we give them that information and then give Megan that information. And I can also let them and Megan know if they have flexibility. If they get out there and they find a house that they fall in love with, that maybe it's a little bit higher, that they can go for that and that we just review the numbers, to make sure they're on board.
And that is one of the reasons why I really like working with Casey, is because I don't have to rely on the consumer to ask that question of, does this monthly payment work for you? Because a lot of times, and I'll reiterate what Casey just said, is the amount that they're pre-approved for is usually more than what they actually want to spend per month. And so we try to find that sweet spot, what works for them monthly, to incorporate that with our overall budget. And then that's when she gets that pre-approval letter saying she's looked through their file, she has reviewed their cash on hand. Another thing that she will look at is how much you have in savings. I ask that information from the consumer, and the reason why is I know how to negotiate for you, because like we talked about in a previous video, closing costs, you have to pay closing costs. And if you have capital on hand that only covers a portion of that, now I go in with a negotiation aspect, knowing I need to negotiate X dollars for you as a buyer, or else we can't make the deal happen. And so that's where that communication between me, Casey, and the consumer really comes into play, and that like lockstep together collaboration is the secret sauce to success.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And because it's so much about managing the expectations.
Yeah.
And so at every point along the way, if our client knows what's going on and they understand that we're all on the same page, and that we're making sure that we're not putting them into a position that they didn't want to be in,
yes,
in terms of what they're agreeing to on that contract, right? All of those layers of affirmation just help them to feel confident as they go through.
And they're hearing the same thing from Casey and I. Now they know their next steps are X, right? They're going to hear me the next steps with the house. I'll dabble a little bit into what to expect with the lender, and then she'll do the same thing. She'll say, here's going to be our next steps with financing aspect. Here's some also things you need to be working on with Megan. And they're hearing it from both sides going, okay, so this is what right looks like. So once you have established that monthly payment and what that overall budget looks like, then we go house shopping. We're doing the showings. During our first appointment, you have told me where you want to live, how you want the house to look. This is your budget. You want a fence, you don't want a fence, you don't care. Like, this is when we take all of that and then we go look at houses. Before we submit an offer, there's a couple of things I like to do for my buyer. Is one, I like to run comparables on that property to make sure it's accurately listed, to make sure that the house isn't listed above what I think it would garner via an appraisal. And then also, I also like to make sure that they are prepared to know what that monthly payment will look like and that cash to close for that specific house. Casey gives me what's called the estimated fee sheet, and this goes over what the estimated monthly payment, because it's still an estimate, the estimated monthly payment would be, and then the estimated cash to close for that specific house. And then again, if that capital that they have in their savings is below what that cash to close is, and also I'm still going to try to negotiate seller paid closing costs for you regardless. But if we need a certain amount, this is when I can go in with that offer and potentially negotiate those seller paid closing costs for you, knowing that I have to get X from the seller in order to proceed with the transaction. And then once we find the house and we are officially under contract, then the baton gets passed over to Casey, and then her and her team take it forward.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah, because they've already done all the legwork with you guys, pre-approval process.
Yeah. At that point, you should already have all your, most of your documents, and it's really about then discussing, locking in, because we can't lock in on an interest rate until we have a contract and a close date and a loan amount and an address. So once we have that, that's when we're going to be talking about, okay, here's where the market is today. We've been talking about this all along. We've been kind of doing run-throughs of this moment, and now we're here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your interest rate options. And then once we do that, it's loan disclosures, ordering your appraisal. We order the title work with the closing attorney to make sure that the property can be conveyed over to you, and any liens that are paid or that are attached to the property are paid before you get the title and take ownership. But we try to move as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then I'm keeping Megan updated and you updated throughout, so that as we hit these milestones and we're getting ready for the final approval and closing, where we're at.
Yes.
But points of contact that I'll have with Megan, typically I'm communicating when the appraisal comes in, because that's very much
when it's been ordered, and then when we can expect the due date, and then when the appraisal comes in.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
specifically. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And also updating on the status of getting the loan, submitted to underwriting and approved, right? Because there's these different phases that your loan moves through. from the point where we originate it, we process it, we underwrite it, and then we close it.
And that all happens from a single point of contact, which is again why I prefer working with local lenders, because I literally have her cell phone number in my phone. And this is why if you want a maximum customer service experience where you will get responsive answers, unfortunately working with big corporations where they have, like she talked about, the opener, the processor, the underwriter, and the closer, those can be 4 different people with a different extension who never answer their phone. And I'm going to speak from experience. I'm not going to shade any specific company, but they're all kind of the same. So with Casey and her team is I have a single point of contact who I can call and say, hey, Casey, or even email, right? Because I want to be considerate because she's not always going to be available for my calls, but that's okay. She's a busy woman and that's great. But I can say, hey, I know you are, boo. I know. But I can always call and I'm like, hey, Casey, where are we at in this one? Or I've got this back. And it's just easier, seamless. And I know the consumer feels like they have the white glove concierge experience when working with Casey and I, because we do have that. It's just like a little bubble that we keep them in along the way, where I feel like some of these big box banks, they feel like they're kind of out there flapping by themselves. And then that company asks for the same document 2 or 3 times, which can be frustrating for my buyer, especially if they're 3 or 4 time zones different from the bank. So it just gets a little hairy. And that's, again, I'm just going to reiterate it again. This is why I prefer local lenders. It's just a better overall customer experience.
I think communication is a big part of it.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's the biggest one. I feel like my clients who have used big box banks, the biggest gripes are submitting documents multiple times and then they don't get the right communication where their file is at any point in time, and that's the point of stress for them because they're like, "Where's my file at?"
Right.
And I'm like,
"So much they've got to deal with anyway."
Yeah.
There's so many different things that you're keeping up with when you're buying a house, which is really the biggest financial decision that you're probably going to make in a lifetime for most people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So if we can take that stress off of your plate by just taking care of, the stressful stuff and communicating with each other behind the scenes and making sure that you're informed along the way, that's our goal.
Correct. That's what I was talking about, that lockstep, and we're just all like locking arms along the way. Okay, so once we're under contract, that's when, she gets the ball rolling with the lending aspect of it. We're ordering our inspections, we're negotiating repairs and all of those things. And then once the repair negotiation happens and everything comes back, that's when she gets the appraisal, and we, as the buy side, are the only ones that ever see the actual appraisal in hand. Once all the repairs are negotiated, the appraisal's back, then I believe it goes back into your hand to get the closing package over to the closing attorney. We've got closing scheduled, all of that. It goes back to Casey and they're working it. And then what is those 3 words that we love to hear at the end of a call?
The clear to close.
Clear to close. Yes.
That's one of the favorites, right?
Yes.
That's when we're all done. We don't have to ask you for anything else.
Yes. Yes, that's what we do, the happy dance. The second happy dance is actually at the closing table.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, but clear to close.
Yeah. But we deliver the final numbers, and all along the way, you're getting updates, right? You get the numbers multiple times as far as what's this transaction going to look like for you, both with monthly cost estimate, and then as we move throughout that loan process, certain factors that were estimates now become actual numbers. Like you decide on who your homeowner's insurance is, for example. You lock in on your interest rate, And so we start with a loan estimate, then we move into the pre-closing disclosure, which is our latest and greatest version of your final numbers. And then we have the final closing disclosure, which is, viewed by, it's the closing attorney in North Carolina, it's us, the lender, Megan, signs off on it as well, saying, yep, everything's accounted for. There's no outstanding invoices that we need to add. We're good to go. And so then we give you that final closing disclosure well ahead of your closing so that you can see it, review it, ask questions, and then and then it's time for walkthroughs.
Yes, and then we do the final walkthrough no more than 24 hours prior to closing. And then once we see that all the repairs have been done and completed, and the house is in the same or better condition as you saw it during the original showing, then we go ahead and we sit down at the closing table. I know Casey, she always meets me at the closing, so it's me. It's me, Casey, the client, and then the closing attorney. And then we take pictures and we give you congrats after, and then the keys. Yep. And then once the deed records with the county, then you receive the keys from the attorney. So that's how the process goes between myself and Casey along the way. And there's a lot of other nuances that happen, but that's just kind of the general tempo of how things go. That's why it's super important to make sure that your mortgage professional and your agent are on the same page when it comes to working, because that's the secret to success for a smooth, seamless experience. Did you have anything else that we should add to the process? Yeah, I think we covered it, right? Okay. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in today as we talk about the purchasing process and how it works between the mortgage professional and myself as the agent. And again, if you find my content to be helpful or relevant to anybody and you want to share it, anybody who you think would find it helpful, please do so. Like, share, and subscribe my content. It means the world to me. And if you have any questions that we didn't go over today, please always feel free to reach out to Casey or myself. We are consider us a resource for you when it comes to this process. And as always, I'm Megan Schoaf, your transparent realtor, real estate, real talk, transparent guidance. We'll see ya.